evening, everyone, and I want to welcome you to our regular city council meeting dated August 28, 2023. At this time, we'll call the meeting to order. I will begin with the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council members, you all received your packet over the weekend. You've also received the city council agenda via email. After you look things over, at this time I will entertain any motions to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan.
Second.
Councilmember Williams, thank you. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to presentations. Tonight we're going to have an MPA annual report to our City of Sueur representative, Mr. Neil Krogman. Mr. Roby, anything you want to offer before this?
No, I'd just like to welcome Mr. Neil Krogman, who serves as the City of Sueur's representative to MMPA. Who is here with us tonight. We have two items on tonight's agenda related to MMPA and their business, and we'll provide the first. So I'll let him take it over, and I'll run through the slides. And you just tell me.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor and City Council members, I'm going to quickly give you an update report that was given this summer for the MMPA, originally on July 25th up in Buffalo. You might not believe it, but I've actually condensed the slides. So let's go, Joe. Okay, here you see the 12 member cities. Right now, Olivia, number 10 on that list, is still a member and will be until 2040, but they have not renewed their contract like we did, extending with the others. However, Olivia is also a very minor part of our load, the amount of electricity that they use. So the 11 others will remain for many years and will be fine and very stable. So let's move on. Quickly, history, we started in 92. In 95, it began operations. We were one of the charter members of this organization. You can see where others have joined along the way. And on the bottom, you'll see that in 2023, we're currently at 43% renewable energy. We'll come back to that in a few minutes. Okay, Joe? A mission, very simply, and this is part of the mission because you're part of it, is to provide reliable, competitively priced power and to create value for MMPA and its members. MMPA, by the way, as you can see up in the top a little bit, the Minnesota Municipal Power Agency. Most of you probably know that, but somebody watching may not. Let's go ahead, Joe, please. Our power supply is basically two types: natural gas, which gives us reliability, and renewable, which controls the price. And you can see we have three major stations on the left as you look at the slide for natural gas, and then we have 5 others right now for renewable. We'll move on and I'll show you those real quickly. Natural gas, we have Faribault Energy Park, which, by the way, interestingly, is not a member of the MMPA, but nevertheless our plant is located there. That's a 300 megawatt plant. That's our primary one. We provide power there to the grid, which ultimately comes to us and to the member cities. Minnesota River Station is in Chaska. It can produce 49 megawatts. For years, we've not really used it. We just sort of ginned it up a little bit and made sure it worked. And the reason was the material, the equipment was such that it cost us a lot of money to just turn it on. And that's been reduced probably, well, I don't know the exact percentage, but we're down to about less than 10% of what it used to cost us. So occasionally we run that now too. And then Shakopee Energy Park up there, and Shakopee is 46 megawatts. It's our newest gas plant. And when I say ours, it's yours and the city of Sueur is in order. Okay, let's move on, Joe. Wind resources, you can see we have 3 of them. We only own one of them. We own Oak Glen. The others we contract to receive the power, which keeps our costs down. We'll move on. Other renewable, of course, we have Hometown Bioenergy here, which is 8 megawatts. We have Buffalo Solar. If you move ahead, Joe, we'll show the slide. Oh, never mind, it's okay. Just leave it. Buffalo Solar is the only major solar project that we have at this point. You can hear more about solar in a few minutes. Our general business environment, natural gas prices have finally come back to normal from 2022. Wholesale electric prices have returned to normal also then. They're very much related, obviously. Inflation, however, remains above the Fed target. That affects us in all kinds of ways, particularly operationally. And the Federal Reserve Board has raised inflation, or rather interest rates, primarily because of inflation. We'll move on. Changes to our business environment. We have carbon-free electricity law that was passed by our legislature and signed by the governor. We also have the opportunity, however, with the federal government to get direct pay of up to 30% of capital costs for renewable energy investments. And MMPA, through our management company, Avant, is pursuing that very vigorously, looking for ways that we can get some return, basically some funding for capital investing. Okay, let's move on, Joe. Our net income last year was $7 million. That's lower than previous years. We'll be higher than that this year, and that's because in 2022, we had extremely high gas prices, and that's exactly what it did. Okay, Joe, we'll move on. Debt service, this is very good news. We are 2.07 times the debt service, and our bond documents require 1.15. So you can see from a financial standpoint, we're doing very, very well. And we move on then to the next one, which also indicates that both major rating agencies have upgraded our rating. The numbers are very difficult for me to understand how you go from an A+ to an AA-, and that's better, but it is. And going from an A1 to an A3 is also better. And they cited our financial performance as strong, credit quality of our members, that's you and the other cities, and competitive rates. Okay, Joe? Now, we have 14 states that have passed carbon-free laws. 4 states have carbon-free executive orders. In Nebraska, there are 3 major utilities, and they have decided together to go carbon-free. And that means we're getting a lot of pressure, obviously, to be carbon-free. We're one of the 14 states with carbon-free laws, so we'll move on to that. Have Joe hit the button, please. Notice, starting on the top, we have to have 60% by 2030, 90% by 2035, and 100% by 2040. And as indicated earlier, we're at 43% right now. So we're on our way. We will easily make the target of 60% by 2030, but it's going to take a lot to get to 90% by 35 and 100% by 40. Not saying that won't happen, but it requires a lot of effort on the part of MMPA to get there. Joe, let's move on. Carbon-free electricity needs. Hit it again, please. Solar near our members. Later on your agenda, you will see a letter written to county commissioners regarding both not objecting to and consenting to. It's kind of interesting how you put the two together. Joe could explain it if you wanted to, but those 2 things are in the letter. Going to the county commissioners asking that that they approve having a solar installation near the city, and that will be on the agenda. I would urge you to pass that. It gets us higher toward our 60% goal. It also gives us reliable power right in our backyard that can be used here, because one of the reasons you put them in a local area is to avoid transmission fees, because when they're in the local area, you're not paying the mid-continent, I'll call it MISO, I won't go any further, the organization that controls rates, okay? We'll have wind near our members eventually. We do not have that now. Each city has a token windmill or wind turbine, but that's not significant. And we will, of course, operate Faribault Energy Park, Shakopee Energy Park, Minnesota River Station with renewable gas. We're going to be making renewable gas here out at our bio plant out south of town. Renewable natural gas is obviously not taken like regular gas. It's manufactured from organic products. Okay, move, Joe. Large scale sites, these are potential, not actual. We're looking at 2 in Anoka, Elk River. Possible sites might not have 2 in the end, might just have 1. Buffalo, we already have 1, so we're not looking anymore. Chaska, Shakopee, there's 5 possible places. East Grand Forks 4, Elk River 1, and Sueur is 1, and that's what comes on your agenda later today. Joe? Small scale also might come in Arlington, Brownton, North St. Paul, and Winthrop. Some of those, you got like North St. Paul, they've got a land issue. The others, there's a lot of rural area, but there'll be a smaller, just based on the load, the amount of electricity that Arlington, Brownton, and Winthrop would require. Okay, Joe, all right. We're going to make renewable natural gas, as I indicated. We're converting what's out there now from making electricity. It's the same gas. We're just going to put the gas into the pipeline, which gives us a resource that actually returns investment for all of our member communities. And we're working on getting renewable natural gas from a waste management landfill in Elk River, and we'll hopefully be developing more renewable gas facilities. Okay, Joe? Results of carbon-free, we continue to use our gas generation. Generation is located close to members, and wind and solar have a zero run cost. What that means basically is once we get it in there, we pay for it. Okay, whatever fee we're paying to buy it, or if we own it, just to maintain it. But basically, we're not paying any fuel costs for it. So it basically improves our competitive position. Okay, Joe? That's it. I thought I'd run through it real quickly. If you have any questions, please, I'll be glad to try to answer them. Later, you're going to have someone on here from MMPA who will give you a little more information on the solar installation, what it means, and what's required to put it in. So I'm honored to be your representative. Of course, you appointed Ryan to be the alternate now. We meet every month, and I'm honored, as I said, to represent you and the city, and to try to do the best we can to provide reliable, safe, and frankly, cost-efficient electricity. So thank you. Anybody, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. I appreciate your update. We appreciate your work on the MMPA. I know you put in a lot of time over the years at the MMPA. We become kind of our expert, and we do value our partnership with the MMPA. So thank you. Anybody else? I think we're good.
I'll go home and watch you on TV now.
Thank you. Moving on to consent agenda, all items on the consent agenda are considered routine and have been made available to the city council at least 2 days in advance of the meeting. These items being acted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member or citizen shall request, in which event the item will be removed from the agenda and considered in normal sequence. So with that said, Mr. Roby, do you want to review these with us?
I would. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Only 3 items on tonight's consent agenda. The first is approval of city council minutes from last meeting, August 14th, 2023. Second is approval of disbursements through today, August 28th, 2023. There are no items on today's disbursement list above $25,000. And item C, personnel action, approval of hiring of a public works operator to prepare for the impending retirement of an operator in that department.
Thank you. Pretty simple, pretty quick. Any questions for our city administrator regarding the consent agenda? If not, I will entertain a motion to the consent agenda.
Oh, second.
Thank you, Councilmember Schneer, Councilmember Sullivan seconding that. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to public comment. I don't know if we have anybody signed up. Mr. Tim's going to check. Nothing there. Thank you. Which takes us into the city administrator update. Mr. Ruby, this is your opportunity to share with us what you have going on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Just a few items tonight. We've got another presentation coming up here. Everyone's favorite. Mr. Rice is here to talk on the regular agenda about the 2022 financial audit, so I'll be brief. An EDA meeting tonight. The EDA received the results of the housing study it had commissioned early in 2023. I'll send that out to all the city councilors to let them review it. It's a lot of reading, but a few key takeaways. Essentially, the housing study acknowledged some of the needs that we have seen on an anecdotal level over the last several years, which is an objective need for senior housing, meaning both assisted but also independent senior housing, market rate, workforce, multifamily housing, and single family housing. No one is shocked to see those 3 things as being the top 3 priorities from a housing standpoint. It also generally covers most of the housing needs in a given community. But we have some numbers behind that in the housing study that support the levels or the degree to which those various housing opportunities are the opportunity for each of those within our community. We have the numbers to back it up now that we can share with the developers we've been visiting with around different housing opportunities within the city. We also visited a little bit about the EDA land and the provision of an EDA loan, or just essentially a redisbursement of the Small Cities Development Program Fund to so many properties here in town that operate the building that will house the Maven, which everyone is eagerly awaiting its opening. And I'm not going to ask Mr. Copley, who's here tonight, when it's going to open, because that's the $1 million question. But we're all very excited for it. We had an RPAC meeting, and one of the key takeaways from the RPAC meeting, one is that Giant Days was generally a success. I appreciate everyone's efforts there throughout our parks and recreation system. We are also looking at pulling some recommendations together to bring to RPAC around campsites at River Park. We'll have some recommendations for the committee next RPAC meeting around a number of potential campsites and the rules that would govern campsites at River Park. Public Services Director, that position has been posted for 2 weeks now. We've been receiving applications for that position. It'll be open for another week, after which we'll score the applications and begin the process of interviews. Quick police department update. Our interim police chief, Terry Sueur, has been engaged in our community. Many of you have maybe seen him around. Working very closely with our two sergeants, Sergeant Sines and Sergeant Gladys, onboarding a new police officer, and Chief Sueur checks in with me regularly with questions and just to give me the updates from the department. So that's going well. We will begin our interviews for police chief candidates tomorrow. We have 3 interviews tomorrow afternoon and 4 interviews on Wednesday. That's for the first round of police chief interviews. I'll provide an update to council at the next meeting. But I would anticipate at least 1 additional round beyond the first round once we narrow the pool of candidates. And that is my update for today.
You, any questions for city administrator from anybody? Thank you. Moving on to our regular agenda. First thing on that is the 2022 financial audit report. Mr. Wilbur, you want to introduce our presentation?
I'd be happy to, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Tonight we have the pleasure of welcoming Mr. Andy Grice. Andy is well known to several council members, and he's been here working with the city of Sueur on its audit for the past number of years. And he's been working closely with Director Graff on finalizing the 2022 financial audit. And there are hard copies and a box behind Lindsay in the back there. It's fine, Lindsay, keep doing your thing. There's a box back there with hard copies of the financial statements and the communication letter from Bergen KDB, our audit firm, and they will be available to the public and to members of city council as well. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Grice. Andy, my clicker is not working, so you just give me a nod when you want me to flip to the next page.
All right, thank you, Joe. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of council for having me here tonight. As Joe's mentioned, I enjoy working with the city of Sueur over the past number of years, and even dates back even further. My grandparents are from this area, so every summer I included the trip down here to the Sueur. So every time I come into town, it's just that flood of memories coming in. So good memories. Tonight, just have the presentation of the audit report for the year ended December 31st, 2022. State statute requires that the city go through an audit of the financial statements, and those financial statements are management's responsibility. So they keep the books and records for the city, and it's our job as your auditor to come in, perform our audit procedures. We test, examine through sampling of transactions, inquiries, risk assessment process to determine where the risks lie in terms of a potential misstatement in your financial statements. We perform those those procedures and ultimately give an opinion on the financial statements, which provides assurance to the city and users of the financial statements, reasonable assurance that whether these financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects. I'm happy to report that we are giving a clean, unmodified opinion on the financial statements. That's the best that we can give as your auditor. We also issue a report on government auditing standards. This report takes a look at internal control over financial reporting, and we're required to report any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control that come to our attention as part of our audit procedures. And we had 3 material weaknesses to report. And that happens whenever we propose an adjustment to the city's books or an adjustment to the financial statements that's material in nature. We had one for current year activity. We also had some adjustments related to prior periods. We also noted a lack of segregation of accounting duties, and that's a similar finding that's been received in the past, and that just indicates that there is some overlap in certain accounting functions due to the size of the office staff there in finance. We have one significant deficiency to report, so it's related to improving the utility billing process. So there has been some changeover in systems there, and there's continuing to be some classification issues and just in terms of how it's being reported on the financial statements, but it does not rise to that significant or to that material weakness level, but is still important just to be aware of some of those issues that are being worked through there. The last report that we have is our Minnesota Legal Compliance Report. The Office of the State Auditor requires us to report on anything that comes to our attention that relates to their Minnesota Legal Compliance Guides, which covers statutes related to conflicts of interest, the city's deposits and investments, contracts and bidding, other miscellaneous provisions, and we had no findings to report when it came to Minnesota Legal Compliance. From there, we'll get into the financial results. We also issue our communications letter that includes all the required communication in accordance with audit standards, but it also includes our financial analysis that gives some trend data and also just an evaluation of financial performance there for the year 2022. And we start with taking a look at the general fund budget. And the budget is City Council's responsibility in terms of what's adopted and also the monitoring of that budget. And the budget called for $2.3 million in revenue, $3 million in expenditures, anticipated net transfers coming in at about $563,000. And it was anticipated that there would be a decrease in fund balance of about $175,000 for the year. When we take a look at actual results, actual revenues came in at about $2.5 million. So that's $162,000 better than anticipated. That had to do with some grant activity that was not anticipated, and also licenses and permits coming in better than anticipated, and having some conservative budgeting there. On the expenditure side, that came in at $3.1 million. That was $103,000 more than anticipated. Majority of that occurred in the public safety category, and that was just due to union contract settlements and higher wage increases than anticipated. The result of current year activity was a fund balance of about 47.6% of 2022 actual expenditures. And the policy calls for a minimum of 40% of budgeted expenditures. The city is in compliance with its policy. And then also just wanted to note the components of inflows of resources in the general fund. About 18% comes from the electric fund, which represented about $548,000 here for 2022. So just to continue to monitor that as you evaluate current year activity in the general fund. The next chart shows the 5-year history of the general fund. And this again highlights revenues, net transfers, as well as total expenditures. And then fund balance, as I mentioned, represented 47.6% of expenditures. And with the decrease that we saw there, it did decrease down to just under $1.5 million here for the year. We'll take a look at the components there of revenues and expenditures, both looking at what makes up general fund revenues here, looking at 2022 compared to 2021, and also we'll look at some further details on the budget side. But here in 2022, there was a decrease in licenses and permits. Comparing 2021 to 2022, there was also a decrease in property taxes allocated to the general fund. So that decreased from about $781,000 back in 2021 to $719,000 here in 2022. Also some decreases in some miscellaneous categories. And as a result, we did see a little bit of an increase in the proportion of intergovernmental revenue here for the city, making up 60% of general fund revenues compared to 53% back in 2021. Now, taking a look at budget to actual results, again, just a reminder that those came in better than anticipated by $162,000, or about 7%. And again, just licenses and permits being conservative there, that came in better than anticipated. And then also more grant activity taking place, which that variance is in that intergovernmental category. When we take a look at expenditures here, comparing 2022 to 2021, public safety continues to be the largest portion of general fund expenditures. That made up 48% compared to 43% back in 2021. We did see increases in that public safety category with increased wages, and that was also an increase there because there was a decrease on the general government side. So there was higher city administrator costs and then also other consulting services back in 2021. And that decreased from 33% back in 2021 of total general fund expenditures to 27% here in 2022. When we take a look at budget to actual results, expenditures came in higher than anticipated, but by about 3.5%. And part of that has to do again with public safety coming in higher than anticipated with the contract settlements and higher wages in that area. And that was offset by general government, which came in less than anticipated with some turnover and a director position that was vacant for part of the year. The next slide we'll take a look at here shows tax capacity, the certified tax levy and tax rate here over the last 5 years. And with the increase in the certified tax levy, which increased from about $2.6 million up to $3.1 million, we did see an increase in tax capacity rate. And that's due to the total tax capacity, which is tied to market values within the city, not increasing at as high as rate as that certified tax levy. So we did see that the tax capacity rate increase to the highest point here in the 5 years presented at about 87%. Next, we'll take a look at the city's enterprise funds. These funds operate like a business. These are on a different basis of accounting, so you're seeing the full cost of providing these services, which includes operating revenues and operating expense, and that includes depreciation expense. And so we'll take a look at those results, but also take a look at the unrestricted net position number, which is that the bottom part of the chart there, and it's also the line that you're seeing there going above the top. And that unrestricted net position is impacted, one, by operations, and the other component is debt service, so any outstanding debt in these funds, and also any capital-related costs. So those three components is what impacts how that number changes here over the years. And here in 2022, starting at the top with operating revenues, that's the green bar there, we did see an increase there, going from $2.2 million to just over $2.3 million with increasing rates. Operating expenses decreased, and that was a result of pension expense being less than anticipated or lower than the prior year. And that resulted in an operating income of $765,000. That's the highest of the 5 years presented. If we exclude depreciation, which is a non-cash operating expense, just to give a better idea as to cash flow in this fund, did see a positive there of $1.1 million. After factoring out some of the capital-related items, that ultimately did lead to a decrease in unrestricted net position, going from about $2.7 million down to $1.9 million, which is comparable back to about 2019. Next chart takes a look at the sewer fund. And the sewer fund, you can see there at the very bottom chart, as well as that line there, does have a negative unrestricted net position. That was at a low point back in 2021 at a negative $2.5 million. So that indicates that there weren't resources available for capital needs. Long-term debt would be needed for those items, and did not have operation-related reserves. Going back all the way to 2018. And the city did respond to that in 2022 with increasing rates, and ultimately did generate an operating income of about $1.1 million, about $1.9 million excluding depreciation, and the current year results did improve unrestricted net position, ending the year at a negative of about $2.2 million. The next chart is the electric fund. The electric fund also saw an increase in operating revenues with increasing rates, Also saw an increase in operating expenses and ultimately led to an operating income of about $1.4 million. So there's some significant changes in the structure of this fund here over the last couple of years. Going back to 2018 through about 2019 timeframe, there was a negative operating deficit from operations. So we're seeing some improvements in this fund since those structural changes were made, and as a result, we did see unrestricted net position remain fairly consistent, decreasing a little bit from about $2.6 million down to about $2.4 million. The next chart we'll take a look at is the community center fund. And this fund has experienced some challenges just in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic and impacts on memberships. And so we have highlighted this one here in the past. And just to highlight the budget, overall, the revenue budget at just over $1 million, expenditures at $842,000. And with transfers out, and that's related to debt service requirements, there was no change in fund balance anticipated. And when we take a look at current results, revenues came in a little bit better than anticipated in memberships and charges for services. That came in $77,000 better than anticipated. Actual expenditures came in about $58,000 over budget. And so that did result in about a $19,000 surplus. So this fund is starting to improve. Did have a $731,000 negative fund balance, and this year ended the year at about a negative $711,000. So just to continue to monitor this fund and just to ensure that working its way back towards a positive fund balance. And also to note that this fund does receive property tax dollars. It received about $501,000 in property tax levies back in 2021 and received about $696,000 here in 2022. That's a high-level look at the audit reports, also providing that 5-year history as well, just to highlight the community center fund operations. But next, I'd just like to open it up for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bryce. Any council members have any questions for? Well, I appreciate your thorough report and the work you put into this, and it's on behalf of the city, thank you for everything.
Yep. Thanks so much for having me.
By the way, who are your grandparents here in town?
Bill and Gladys Grice.
Of course, thought so. Number one.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Even May, Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
before I would ask, council, if they have any other questions, you can certainly ask Mr. Grant or me. Otherwise, I would request a motion to accept the 2022 financial audit as presented.
So moved. Second.
I'm sorry, that was from Councilmember Swander, seconded by Councilmember Sullivan. Any other comments? Not. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 8B, MMPA Sueur. Took away from me. I got it here. The solar project letter to Sueur County. Mr. Rowe, I want to explain this a little bit. Get back on track there. We had a little presentation from Mr. Crobin talking a little bit about the solar panels that are looking to be put in just southeast of town. There's some restrictions as far as the county goes on how close these things can be to our community. And Mr. Roby will kind of explain that a little bit to us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I see Mr. Burton was able to jump on, and Mr. Harris. Well, okay, fantastic. I'm gonna give a quick introduction here, and then I'll introduce our guests. Mr. Mayor, members of council, what you have before you tonight is a request to approve a letter of non-objection and consent to a proposed MMPA solar project in Ottawa Township. We've outlined what the project is, and I'll invite our guests in a moment to explain a little bit more, and I'll invite them to answer questions that council members may have. MMPA presented a plan that would construct a 5 megawatt solar photovoltaic renewable energy facility located within a 2-mile setback of the city of Lesueur's municipal boundaries. As Mr. Krogman mentioned earlier, the construction of such a facility would serve a couple of purposes. One, to fulfill MMPA's goal and work toward MMPA's goal of establishing locally sourced renewable energy. It also serves to prepare MMPA to meet the required mandates of the state as far as carbon-free energy generation. The facility, as planned, would provide a distribution feeder line to the Boatwright 1 and Boatwright 2 substations, which are owned and operated by the city of Lesueur. And the city council's involvement here, first of all, is I would say on an awareness level to make city council aware of MMPA's planned submissions to Lesueur County for a conditional use permit to construct this facility. As part of Lesueur County's zoning ordinance, this is an allowable use within agricultural zones within Lesueur County. That being said, the consent of any municipality within 2 miles of a facility such as this is required. And so MMPA has requested that a letter be drafted and to be sent from the city of Lesueur to Lesueur County, offering the city of Lesueur's consent and non-objection to the proposed project. If there are any questions for me, I can answer them, but I would also like to introduce 2 individuals who have joined us for the meeting tonight. Mr. Kenton Martin with EDF Renewables would be working on the project itself, and Mr. Sueur, who works for Avant Energy and is heavily involved with the MMPA board and running MMPA's daily operations. Mr. Martin, Anshu, if there's anything you'd like to add, I invite you to do so at this time.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Yeah. Hi, good evening. My name is Anju Air. Thanks, Joe. I think your letter very well describes the project and its possible positive impacts for the community. However, Kenton and I are here to answer any questions you guys might have on this project.
We do have one question.
Just real quick, I know the land. Will MMPA own or lease that?
Good evening. The land right now has an option on it. MMPA intends to purchase the land before it starts building the project with EDF Renewables.
So this is going to be purchased as opposed to leased.
That's correct.
So there's no eminent domain or anything like that. It's just a straight sale. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, that is going to be on the southeast end of the airport, correct? And that's not going to be an issue with it. So
It's over by the 4-way stop. To turn right to go to the golf course, I think.
Yeah.
So it's far enough away that it's not going to be an
And the ground clearance, and maybe Mr. Martin can speak to this, but from a ground clearance standpoint, it would be outside of our takeoff and landing of the airport. But I imagine the ground clearance of a facility like this is insignificant when it comes to airports.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I think he's trying, I think he was trying to.
Martin, can you hear us? Mr. Martin?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
All right, thank you.
Yeah, you are correct. The solar panels will be less than 20 feet tall, and they're pretty much insignificant to air traffic. And we've already kind of done some diligence on that as well through the FAA's tool.
Mr. Martin, do you have any prediction on how many panels will be going up?
Yes, it will be, so the county has a limit of 5 megawatts. And that equates to, give me a second. It'll be around 9,000 panels on a single axis tracking system. So it will follow the sun as the day progresses to maximize production.
Thank you. Any other questions? Gentlemen, I appreciate you taking time out to answer questions. Mr. Roby, do you have anything else you want to add before we take this to the floor? Okay. If nothing else, I would accept a motion to approve the drafted letter to be submitted on behalf of the city of Sueur to Sueur County concerning the proposed NMPA solar project in Sueur County.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan. Councilmember Huntington seconded. Any other comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Which takes us on to item 8C. 8C, which would be the second reading of ordinance number 600, amending the zoning map for lot line adjustment for Mound Cemetery. Mr. Roby. We kind of went through all these a couple of weeks ago, but we'll just kind of review them rather quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. As discussed at the last meeting, ordinance 600 would allow for a lot line adjustment and a rezoning of the acquired property. This is property that is changing hands from the owners of the LaBelle's property to Mountain Cemetery. And planning commission recommended approval of the zoning map amendment lot line adjustment, changing the property from I1 light industrial to PI, which is the current zoning district for Mountain Cemetery. City council waived the first reading at its last meeting, and tonight we are recommending a motion to conduct the second and final reading of ordinance number 600.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Roby? If not, I'm looking for a volunteer to read ordinance 600, or we can accept a motion to waive that second reading. That sounded like a motion from Councilmember Williams, seconded by Councilmember Sullivan. Any other discussion, comments, or concerns? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to 8D, the second final reading, ordinance 601, Oak Terrace rezoning. Again, another quick recap, Mr. Roby.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, this relates to Oak Terrace, the property that's owned by Oak Terrace Assisted Living, and also the church property at the corner of Turtle Street and South 4th Street. Both of those are currently zoned R2, which is single family residential, guided in low density residential land use. Currently, of course, Oak Terrace is not single family residential. It is multi-family residential. And with the new zoning ordinance that was passed in 2019, the planning commission reviewed this and proposed rezoning both parcels to R4, which is high density residential, and guide them both to high density residential within the comprehensive plan. Ordinance 601 would allow for these two changes to the comprehensive plan and the rezoning, and city council waived the first reading at its August 14th meeting. So staff is looking for a motion to conduct or waive the second final reading of ordinance 601.
Thank you. Any questions from any council members? If not, looking for a volunteer to read ordinance 601. If there's no volunteer, I will accept the motion to waive the second reading.
I will make a motion to waive that second reading.
Thank you, Councilmember Wonders. Councilmembers Tui seconded. Thank you. Any other discussion, comments, or concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
The ayes, anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Moving on to item 8E, that'd be the second final reading of ordinance 602, parking lot rezoning. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Ordinance 602 would allow for the rezoning and rezoning of the parking lot that was formerly owned by the city of Sueur, now owned by the Sueur Family Dental, It's currently zoned PI because it was city-owned, recommended to be zoned B1B for Central Business District mixed use. This would allow the dental office and the adjoining parking lot to be combined into one single lot, which if you refer to the Sueur County's beacon map, the county has already taken the liberty of combining those two lots. So if this goes a little sideways tonight, I'll have to call the county and ask them to make a change. But planning commission recommended that city council rezone the parking lot parcel in concert with the comprehensive plan and consistent with the business that owns the parking lot. City council did waive the first reading ordinance 602 at its last meeting.
Mayor Kirby, I'll make a motion to waive the second reading.
Second. Jumped right into that. Okay, Mr. Sullivan made a motion to waive the first reading. Councilmember Tui seconded that motion. Any discussion, comments, or concerns? If not, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Moving on to items of appreciation and reports. Council members, it's your opportunity to share what's going on in the community, what's going on with your commissions. And as always, Councilmember Huntington, we're going to start with you.
All right, only one thing, school is back, so let's keep collective production walks and kids on bikes and going to school and keep it to 25 miles an hour on ferry during school. So that's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Schlater.
I did attend a Region 9 Comprehensive Economic Development meeting last Tuesday. Bridget Tuck was the guest speaker. And I also want to give all the council members a reminder that the Sueur County officials meetings start again in September, and Sueur will be hosting the first meeting.
Moving on to Councilmember Sullivan.
Nothing to add. We'll be bringing up the meeting.
Thank you. Councilmember Swanberg.
Yeah, just to echo Councilman Huntington, yeah, school is back in session. Just best of luck to all of our faculty and staff. Hope you have a fantastic school year.
Can you miss it?
You.
That's good to hear. Moving on to Councilmember Tui.
Just in the paper, in fact, I sent an email to Jim Wagner, superintendent of schools. Tip of the hat to him and his staff that I don't know if anybody saw the numbers, but Sueur did really well. Now, the numbers weren't that great, but compared to anybody else around here, they were way above. There was only one other community that beat Sueur, and that was LCMW or something like that. So Lake Crystal, welcome Memorial. Thank you. Yes, they did very well in comparison. So congratulations, keep up the good work.
Thank you for that report. Councilmember Williams.
I just wanted to comment on the Pioneer Power, the event that happened this past weekend was quite well attended, and kudos to the group that organized that. With that, that's it.
Thank you. I have nothing to add tonight, other than we will see you all in September. Until then, we appreciate all the work you council members do, and we'll see you then. Entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Huntington. All those in favor?
Aye.